In this paper, we discuss how sanctions disrupt the institutional framework for international business and how firms respond to sanctions. We also propose a new research agenda that would help firms and governments to shape their geopolitical strategies. IB scholars should go beyond existing approaches to explain firms' behavior when facing sanctions. Traditionally, sanctions are used as a political tool to weaken the government of a specific country in times of conflict and war. This makes an alternative to a military conflict to cause a change in the policies of the targeted government. Sanctions have mostly been imposed by economically powerful countries or coalitions of countries, often led by the US or the European Union, but in recent years also by China. Sanctions come in various forms. In general, it's technological, economic, financial, and trade sanctions. Yet there may be more targeted measures, such as arms embargoes, travel restrictions, or digital platform blocking. Sanctions have economic consequences to both the sanctioning and the sanctioned countries that are very broad and hard to predict. The impact of sanctions weakens over time as the target country becomes less dependent on the sanctioning country. Past exposure of sanctions may enhance national resilience by localizing supply chains and diversifying trade patterns. In consequence, the longer sanctions are in force, the less economically disruptive they are, as economic actors develop alternative ways of doing business. Some sanctions have arguably contributed to substantive political change in the target country. South Africa apartheid regime is one of oft-cited examples where broad global support for sanctions and corresponding domestic political processes complemented each other. However, the effectiveness of sanctions remains weak. Very few sanctions led to regime change. The limited political impact may be because political elites can better shelter their interests by circumventing rules and rechanneling the impact of sanctions. For firms, sanctions increase uncertainty in operations. They disrupt supply chains, increase transaction costs, and ultimately negatively influence profits from international operations. For example, the impact of sanctions to Iran and Russia shows that the numbers of exporters in the specified industries dropping by 39% and 23% respectively, which are substantial change. For foreign firms already invested in a host country, the introduction of sanctions raises complex legal and ethical questions. In the target country, firms often find ways to substitute their trading partners. For example, in sanctioned countries such as Iraq, South Africa, and former Yugoslavia, domestic products emerged to replace imports under sanctions. As part of traditional lobbying, firms can advocate their industry or sphere of interest to be exempted from sanctions or to be compensated for possible losses. Firms may restructure their international operations through relocation of headquarters, changes in the geographic footprint of supply chains, or divestments. Theoretically, bans on technology transfer should slow technological progress. Surprisingly, sanctions can also stimulate innovations by focusing national efforts on indigenous innovation. For example, China's airspace industry has faced sanctions by the US and the EU for decades, but it emerged as one of China's most innovative industries, as evidenced by the landing on the far side of the moon in 2019, never before achieved by humankind. We propose that firms' reaction to sanctions can be analyzed through the lenses of leading IB theories, including institutions-based view and resource-based view. Sanctions represent major institutional transition, fundamental and comprehensive changes in the formal and informal rules of the game that affect firms. First, sanctions are formal institutions that are backed up by the legal enforcement mechanisms in the sanctioning country. Second, sanctions that are imposed unilaterally by national government create an institutional framework only for firms from that country. Traditional view of institutions may not be fully relevant when they are strongly disrupted by political actors pursuing geopolitical rather than economic objectives. Political interventions may cause conflicts between different layers of formal and informal institutions, even within the same country. As a result, firms may start exploiting the institutions that serve their interests. We also emphasize 4 aspects of resource management affected by sanctions. First, transfer of resources to affiliates in the sanctioned country. Second, acquisitions and development of resources in the sanctioned country. Third, resources and capabilities enabling organizational and strategic change. And 4, development and application of political capabilities based on individual ties, especially in emerging economies. We contribute with few policy-making implications. When faced with sanctions, multinational companies, as well as domestic firms, have to make critical strategic decisions regarding their operations. Should they exit a country, partially divest an operation, maintain course, wait and see, or relocate some of their operations to third countries? These critical strategic decisions are driven by an interplay between institution-based and resource-based considerations, with significant financial and ethical consequences. A study of sanctions also has potential to advance the key theoretical frameworks to better understand different aspects of multinational companies' behavior under external economic and political pressures.